This is a demo of how to use Kaleidoscope to create semantically meaningful sets of examples and tests that check model behavior on those example sets. This is a walkthrough with the content moderation case study, where we're testing a publicly available moderation model for the context of the r/news subreddit. On the left, we can create example sets using data from r/news that represent important concepts we want to understand how the model deals with. When we expand out a particular example set, we can see the top words and the specific examples included in them. In the middle, there's an overall visualization of the whole sample of data from the subreddit, where similar comments are grouped close to each other. On the right, we can define and run tests specifying model behavior. This can tell us, for example, how good the model is at recommending that personal attacks should be moderated. Let's walk through creating an example set. Based on prior knowledge of the subreddit and its rules, we might start off with a particular idea for what to test. For example, let's say that comments attacking or criticizing moderators are something that happens a lot. And I want to make sure that if I'm using a system to flag comments, it's able to catch those. I can start by defining the example set here. Let's say based on my experience, I have some idea of how these examples can manifest. I can enter a particular example to seed this example set. Okay, so now I want to generalize this one example into a much bigger and diverse set of examples representing this concept. I can click to select this example. And what appears down below in the search and explore section are other examples from the data that are semantically similar to that example I selected above. The plot shows me where these examples appear in relation to other examples, and I can zoom into this area. So the results are grouped into 3 clusters. By skimming the clusters in the top words, we can get a sense of the types of examples included in each. So the first cluster seems to be complaining about censorship. The second cluster seems to be about deleting or taking things down. And the third cluster with personal insults and attacks against mods. So depending on our mental model of these types of examples and how they should be dealt with, we might choose to create multiple example sets, like one about personal insults against mods and one complaining about censorship. Or if we think these all fall under the same category, we can go ahead and add them all. In this case, let's say these should all be treated similarly. So we can select all of them, and we can also select specific ones if we don't want to add everything in a particular cluster. But in this case, they all do seem to be pretty relevant. So we can go ahead and add them all to that example set that we had already created. So what happens then is that those 50 examples just got added to the insulting mods example set. They all get automatically selected. So now down below, we're seeing examples that are updated to be similar to all of the 51 examples selected above. So similarly to before, these all seem to be pretty relevant to the concept I'm trying to capture. So I can select all of them and add them to the example set again. I can also use the plot to home in on specific areas. So after this updated with now 101 selected examples, it looks like example 2 is again about anti-Islamic insults, and that appears here in the plot. So we can use the select tool to home into this area of the plot and make sure we get all of those examples and examine them. So the resulting example set has 112 examples. In this case, we started with a specific example that we had in mind. If we don't have that, we can use the search bar to find examples with just a keyword. For example, to make an example set about insults around being too sensitive, I could just search the term safe space. This returns all of the examples in the dataset that contain that term, and I can just select from these to seed a new example set. I can then go through a similar process as before, selecting those 3 examples to find other examples that are semantically similar. I can then add those and continue that iterative process to build up a larger example set. During this process, I might also notice other search terms I could use to expand out the example set. So let's take a look at how to specify and run a test. Here I'm testing that comments insulting mods should be moderated by the model. What we see here is that the performance is 33.9%, which means that the model only recommended that around 34% of those 112 examples should be moderated. And so here we can see the probability distribution and look at specific examples that were and were not moderated by using the brushing tool to filter examples by predicted probability. So here our conclusion might be that the model is pretty bad at catching these examples, and if this is an important rule, we'd know either not to use this model or to make sure that human moderators are looking specifically for these examples because we don't want to really trust the model here. We could also test other types of behaviors. So for example, we could create a test saying that xenophobic comments should be moderated even if they have just kidding or LOL at the end of them. This would be an instance level invariance test, since we want to check that model behavior doesn't change after applying a transformation to each example. We can choose from a range of different transformations. Here, we'll define one that adds LOL JK to the end of each example. So after running, if we open this out, we can see this plot that tells us how much model predictions changed after applying the transformation. So we can see on average, predictions don't change, but there are several examples for which predictions either become significantly more likely to be moderated or less likely to be moderated after adding LOLJK to the end of the example. And we can filter the plot to see examples with either of those behaviors. So what we see now are examples that used to be moderated, but after applying this transformation are now predicted to have very little probability of moderation. So that's a little sample of Kaleidoscope's workflow. Thank you so much for watching this demo.